are giving out textbooks this afternoon. So it's a secondary textbook. I posted that yesterday, I believe. So if you were not able to get a book the other day, I'm giving them out today from 4 to 5. And at this point, what I need from you, if you're one of the folks who doesn't have a book, if you didn't get one last week and you're not sure if you can come get one today, I am no longer going to be doing just random give outs. You and I need to work out something specifically. Okay? Because right now, as far as I know, by looking at the list, I have less than 15 students that still need a book. So I am not, after today, going to do a just general handout anymore. Because, I mean, no offense, but my idea of a good time is not sitting in the courtyard at school from 4 to 5 p.m. Okay? And I'm happy to do it a couple times, but I have a life as well, and I have things I like to do outside of school, and 4 to 5 o'clock is not my normal work day. So I would appreciate if you guys can contact me. You can either send me a message in Google Classroom, or you can email me and let me know what happens. If it's an issue of your adult supervision works at that time, you're not able to drive, you don't have a way to get here. Again, I would ask you to consider, can you ask someone to come pick the book up for you? Someone who is capable, a friend, a neighbor, a relative, etc. That would be great. Or if your parents work at that time, I am happy to get an arrangement in the morning. Whoever has that, can you move for a second, please? I would be happy to meet somebody in the morning. Like, that's not a problem. I can meet somebody at in the parking lot of Kroger or a Starbucks somewhere. That's fine with me. Like, this is weird. These times are unusual. I am happy to do things to help you be successful. But what is not okay is I've had 2 textbook pickups and you don't come to either and you don't tell me what's up. So I'll work with you. I promise. I want you to be successful. But we can't have you the first 2 weeks of school, 3 weeks of school, not having a book and not reading and just say, gosh, I don't know, because it takes me time to scan in those pages and upload them and all that. And that's time I can be using for other things. So again, let me be very clear. If you are not going to be able to pick up a textbook today either, and you didn't get one last week, I need to hear from you so we can make an arrangement. Because if not, the deadline to drop AP classes is 15 school days. That is not next week, but is the beginning of the week after that. If you don't have a textbook by day 15, out. Well, Mr. Rich, I will meet someone from your family somewhere. Heck, if I have to bring it to your house and you live in the general vicinity of Ballard, I don't even mind that. I really don't. But not hearing from you, not making arrangements, that kind of stuff, I'm not putting up with. I know this is difficult. I know NTI kind of stinks. Nobody's a big fan. We all agree. But you just sitting there and saying, well, gosh, I don't know. I'm telling you, I'll help you make a solution. Help me help you make a solution. Okay? This is a college level class. At some point, you sitting there going, I'm just a kid, is not an excuse that is acceptable. Okay, we got to fix it. Saying there's a problem is step 1. Awesome. Fixing the problem is most important. We got to work on that. And I'm offering multiple solutions, but I need to make it happen. So let's do that. Now, if you also look at your calendar, you will notice that on Thursday, we have a second class. We're using one of those support sessions, which I will do on occasion. It is in your schedule. If you have not put special dates like that in a calendar somewhere, you should really do that, because it is the last session of the week, and then you start a 4-day weekend. It is highly likely some of you will miss. Don't be that person. Okay, we have got to squeeze more content in. That's just the way it is. We've talked about that already. You understand that. And this is one of the ways I'm doing it. I'm not making you do every support session. I'm not doing one every week, but I'm squeezing in a couple over the 6 weeks. And I need you to show up. I really do. It's going to be a massive thing because there's potentially up to 100 of you from all 3 of my classes on one Zoom, and that's okay. But that is something I really need you to be here for. So if you have not noted that in a calendar, and I saw some of you reach for a device or a writing utensil to make note of that. So you get to have world history twice on Thursday. I know that's terribly exciting for all of you. All right. So that is on the calendar, which I have a printed copy here, but you have in your Google Classroom stream. One thing you should have done is taken this and put it in some sort of calendar so you know when you're meeting. All right. You cannot get what we're getting on a YouTube video. Khan Academy is good for what it is, but it ain't this. Okay. So I need you here. I need you focused, and then you can have a 4-day weekend and do whatever you want. Hopefully it's legal and moral, but that's your business. Okay, but I need you I need you Thursday afternoon. Everybody clear on that? Okay, next thing. Last time we met, we discussed your project, which is due next week. So Wednesday the 9th. Hopefully you guys have made some level of contact and you've been discussing your opportunities. If you want to wait to do it over the long holiday weekend, that's fine with me. I don't particularly care. What I need to know in the chat is if you were absent last time and do not have a partner to be in a group with, put that in the chat and I will make those arrangements. I'll see how many of you there are, and then we'll go from there, because I did not write down who's in what group. Mr. Rich treats you like an adult. My assumption is that if you miss something, you will contact me. Like Amari just put his name in there, and big shout out to Amari. He emailed me right away after last class, said, hey, Mr. Rich, here's what happened. What can I do about this project? That's my guy right there. We're all gonna miss class on occasion. That's okay, it happens. But when you're out, I need you to own it, take responsibility for it, contact me, and let's work out the arrangements. So very happy with him. So you get a shout out, dude, because right away you took care of it, okay? So I appreciate that. I truly do, okay? So, DJ, I don't understand what you're putting in the chat. That's not where, this is not a joke thing, okay? Your sense of humor and mine are different, clearly. So I would encourage you to let me know. So if it's just Amari, if nobody else says they need a partner, then what I'm gonna ask is any of you that have 2 people in your group might consider adding him as a third and letting him do some of the work and having you do less work for the same amount of grade, which I'm assuming somebody would be willing to do. So if you're a 2-person group, I might ask you at the end of this to volunteer to do so, okay? All right, so now, if you look on today's agenda, it says reading quiz overview. And if you are someone who pays attention to the stream, I just uploaded a few minutes ago your first reading quiz. What the purpose of reading quizzes are is pretty simple. I am trying to see that you are A, doing your homework reading, and B, learning big picture stuff from it. It is not about lots and lots of detail. We talked about note-taking last time. I don't expect you to memorize the text. I don't expect you to have 75 examples of anything. The most examples you need for anything in this class ever is 2. I'm going to teach you the essay formats over the coming weeks, months, and you'll see that that is the most examples you need of anything. So if you're writing down more than 2 examples of anything, you're writing too much. Okay? Understand that. This is a big picture class, global macro history, big picture for the whole world. We're not doing tiny, tiny details about really anything. All right. So what the purpose of the quiz is just to see that you did your homework and try to see that you got something out of it. When we are back together in person, what will happen is you will have quizzes 2 days a week. You will not know which 2 days they are. If we get to a Thursday and we haven't had 2 quizzes already, then you know there's going to be one Thursday and Friday. You will see that there's a reading quiz on the board in my agenda. You will come in as soon as the bell rings, I pass out the quiz. Smart people often will be reviewing their notes before the bell rings to make sure they remember what they read, because you guys being 5th period, it is highly likely you did your homework, but over the course of the next day and 4 periods of class, you might have forgotten something about it, which is why coming in, seeing there's a quiz, reviewing your notes is a smart idea. Now, during this period, obviously, things are a little different. You may use your notes. Typically, I let students use their notes on quizzes the first unit to help you, A, get off to a good start, and B, see that your notes are effective. If you're having trouble with my quizzes, then maybe your notes need to change. All right, so I posted it as a Google form. It is 2 short answer questions. All of them will say things like identify and explain blank. So here is the rules for reading quizzes, and there are 2, and you should write them down or type them up or whatever you're doing note-wise. And this is for every time you write for me. Every single time you need to do 2 things. Number 1, you need to be specific. You need to give a specific example. So don't say things like Buddhism is a religion that says that people should live a good life. What does that mean? Live a good life. Can you give me an example of what that might be in Buddhist culture and faith? Because not all cultures consider good to be something that is across the way. Okay? We all have different interpretations of good. It's a very broad term. Okay? Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that? So let's say you didn't read one time and you have a quiz. I know that'll never happen because you guys will do your homework every day on time, right? If you have to guess on a quiz, the only way you could potentially get it right is to make up something specific. If you say things like stuff or things, that's never going to work. So you're going to increase your ability in the subtle art of BSing if you need to. Because in a perfect world, we always do our work, we're always prepared, but I don't live in that world and neither do you. Okay? And the second thing you need in all quizzes, all short answers, all etc., you need to always explain why or how. As you've already heard me say several times, even though this is only our third class meeting, comma, because. Comma, because. I am giving you a paragraph of space to write. Now, I'm not saying you have to fill that up, but if you write a one-sentence answer, 99% of the time, that's not going to be good enough. Let me say that again for those of you that are stuck in freshman year or middle school, God forbid. 99% of the time, a one-sentence answer is not sufficient. My expectation is a paragraph. As you will learn, I don't do anything randomly. If I give you a paragraph of space, that's because I'm expecting about a paragraph of answer. Okay? And I realize some of your teachers are random or don't pay attention to those kind of things. I'm a detail person. 2 years ago, I got to be on a jury, and I was so pumped. It was my first jury trial ever. And I got elected foreperson, so I got to do the verdict and all that kind of stuff. It was cool. But what I loved about being on a jury was that I got to take lots and lots of detailed notes. And then during our discussion in the jury deliberation room, when we had questions, there was like 3 or 4 of us that everybody was taking notes because they make you. But about 3 or 4 of us were hardcore note takers. I took like 27 pages of notes in a 4-day jury trial. I'm a detail person. I pay attention to stuff. I remember how many brothers and sisters you have. I remember what your favorite team is. I know the names of all of our secretaries' kids. I mean, those are just that's who I am. I'm a detail person. So I expect to have some level of explanation, and I expect there to be some level of detail on it, because otherwise you're just kind of sort of making it up. So specific, how or why. Specific, how or why. Specific, how or why. So in your head, as you're typing up your answer, you should ask yourself, did I give a specific example? And all of you know what that means. And then how or why. I know you can't necessarily see it, but in my room, you can kind of sort of see it. I have lots of posters ordinarily. I didn't put them up yet. That says explain, don't assume. And it's really big on the wall in my classroom. Explain, don't assume. The reason that is on the wall in my classroom is that is the most common thing my students struggle with. They just assume things. Even if it is the easiest thing you know, and you've known it since you were 4 years old, I still need you to tell me why when you write it down. You are a student. I assume you know nothing. The only way you get credit is you prove it. Everybody cool with that? Now, you have 6 pages of reading from now until I see you next week. So that's not a whole lot for a long weekend. Or excuse me, till Thursday, which is still 6 pages. That's not much. You can do that in less than 30 minutes, I imagine. There are 2 headlines. One is about Hinduism, one is about Buddhism. What I do is take your headlines and turn them into questions. So your questions are as follows for the first quiz. Identify and explain a characteristic of Hinduism. It's pretty broad. Anything in your reading would work. Now, this is a reading quiz. So as we get into stuff you may know about, you learned about these religions before, probably last year, 7th grade at some point, and you may broadly know something about them. This is not I'm a Hindu and I'm going to tell you something I know about my own religion. Nope. This is a reading quiz. That's what it says at the top. I am testing that you read and learned something. So even if you're a nerd or this is something you have an intricate knowledge of for various reasons, that doesn't mean you can tell me something you learned because you watched a movie about it with your grandpa. Okay, it's something you got from your reading. It's a reading quiz, not a what I think I know quiz. All right, you will always know what the quiz topics are because I'm never going to make up random stuff. It will come from the headlines. The second headline in your reading for the next 2 days is about Buddhism. There's only 2 headlines, so those are the 2 questions. The only question you ever have is if there are 4 headlines, which 2 is he picking to ask me about? Beyond that, there's no mystery. I am not trying to challenge your intellect. I'm not trying to overwhelm you with how intelligent I am and that I know more than you. Of course I know more than you. I'm the teacher. That should be the case. If I don't know more than you, something's wrong. Okay? So this is not about me flexing on anybody. I am trying to show that you are doing your homework, you are getting something out of it, and it will help your grade. That's it. No tricks. Straightforward. So if there are 5 paragraphs in a headline, you can tell me about anything you read in those 5 paragraphs and explain it, and you will get credit for it on the quiz. And for now, you're using your notes and you have 2 days to work on it via typing it. So if you don't get 2 out of 2 on these quizzes, something wrong. Because when we come back to school in person, you will not be able to use your notes. Okay, so this is, I'm just giving you a freebie here. So if you don't knock these out, something is wrong. But I expect this to be done before class, period. So this should be turned in to me via Google Classroom before we meet again on Thursday. Does anyone have any questions for me about this? This is a good time to share if you have any. So if you're worried about your grade, which most of you probably are, this is AP after all, usually quizzes go in progression. You should, if you're getting 2 out of 2, 90% of the time, there's going to be a day you didn't do your homework and I get you on a quiz that day. It happens. And when we're in person, there's not much you can do about it because what are you going to do? If you get 90% of the time or above 2 out of 2, it's going to be hard for you not to get an A. Because those 2 out of 2s really add up. We will have by the end of the year 35, 40 reading quizzes. And if you're getting 2 out of 2 on 30 of them, 32 of them, 33 of them, you're going to have to really mess some stuff up to not get an A. So in other words, if you do your homework and try to learn the material, I will reward you for that. Also, you're going to pass the AP exam because you're going to know the stuff. I promise you this. By the time we get to May, you will know how to do the things I need you to do. You don't have an option. I'll make you know. The one thing I need you to do is learn content because I can teach you some stuff, but I can't teach you everything, especially currently. So if you do the homework, you read the book and you have a broad sense of the content, and I'm going to teach you how to do the stuff you need to do, what's going to stop you from getting a 4 or a 5 in the exam? And the answer is nothing. Okay? This is pretty simple. I know what I'm doing. Do what I ask you to do. You are naturally intelligent, and if you work hard, you're going to be good. That's it. It's really that simple. There are 3 things that contribute to your success in my class, 2 of which you do not control. Your natural ability, intelligence, you don't control that. You're born with it or you don't have it. Clearly you have it or you probably wouldn't be here. Number 2, you don't control my ability to teach you. You're not in charge of me. You can't make me do anything. But fortunately for you, I'm good at my job. I'm not perfect and I never will be, but I'm good at my job. And if you will do what I ask you to do, you'll be in a position to be successful. The 3rd thing that is important and you do not control it is you do control it, is your work ethic. If you do the work, you will be in a position for success. It's literally that simple. Okay? So if you'll stay with it, even during the pandemic, even when we're on digital learning, even when you're bored or tired or I get it. I feel sorry for myself sometimes too. We all have. If you tell me you haven't had a pity party for yourself over the last 5 months, you're lying. We've all been there. Some of us are there now maybe. But that's not going to help anything. Do your work, try your hardest, you'll see your reward. Okay? Promise. Straight up. All right. Any questions on reading quiz? When is it due?
Thursday.
Before next class. Before we start, I expect you're uploaded. So if you want to, and we're done today, whenever you do your homework reading, what I would do is immediately do the quiz right then and there. What I do not want to see though, and then we'll move on, I do not want to see you copying the textbook. The dudes that wrote this textbook are old white guys, and no one in this chat is an old white guy. I'm the closest. I am middle-aged. I am not old. Okay? So I don't expect you to sound like an old white guy. You are not a PhD in history. I don't expect you to sound like that. I expect you to sound like a teenager. So you might misspell a word on occasion. That's okay. You might not always have cognizant thoughts that make a whole lot of sense. That's okay. But I'm expecting you to give a specific answer and explain why that is correct. So read the questions carefully. And I'm going to ask you not to work with other people. This is an independent process. And since I have a good memory, I start to notice if things look oddly similar between the same people. And this is not a court of law. If I think that you're cheating, I can call you out for it, and I can warn you. And if I see it again, I'm going to start giving zeros and start contacting parents. So I know it's easier to cheat digitally. I get it. Don't. Your grade will be fine if you do the work. Promise. All right. So What we're going to do today is I've got some overviewing to do. We're going to run through, again, period 0. By the end of next week, we're done. So we're kind of hustling through a lot of content. The main reason we're talking about period 0 is for 2 purposes. One, the College Board expects, and when we look at, I will give you a study guide for period 1. The College Board says, here's what you need to know. They expect that you know all the world's major religions and philosophies. Since almost all of them are created before 1200 CE, we're going to talk about them now, starting today, in a few minutes. Second, and finally, when we start learning how to write essays in this class, one of the components of an essay in AP history classes will be the same in US next year. You have to have what's called context. Without getting too much into detail, if you've ever seen a Star Wars movie, all Star Wars movies, well, except for one, open the same. They have that yellow scroll at the beginning telling you some background info. That is context. That is background information that helps you understand what is about to happen. What planet they're on, who is the bad guy, who do we need to be worried about, who's the hero, all those things are included in that Star Wars context in all those movies, except for one that I know of. You are going to provide, when you write an essay, context, a little bit of background that explains what's happened before the topic of the essay you're getting ready to write. So you have to write an essay about period 1. So to help you with that, we're going to give you a little bit of context for period 0. What is life like for different groups of humans before 1200 CE. So I'm going to spend about 10, 15 minutes doing a little bit of that. Then we're going to transition to religion. Okay. And you guys, if you know anything about any of this stuff, I would love you to unmute and answer my questions, etc. Okay. So I'm going to share my whiteboard. Give me just a second to do that. And then we will take a little bit of notes today. Not too much, but a little bit. And again, I apologize in advance for my terrible handwriting. It is bad. All right, so we have ancient civilizations way, way back, the earliest of the early, frankly, what your project should kind of sort of be modeled on, and they are called the River Valley civilizations. These are the earliest known human civilizations. Any guesses as to why we call them River Valley civilizations?
Because they probably lived near rivers and valleys.
Yeah, yes. One of the most important things, thank you, Isabella. One of the most important things y'all need to realize is sometimes when stuff is easy in this class, it's because it is. We're going to do some hard stuff, but if you've done your homework, you've come to class, you've taken notes, you've answered the questions I've asked you to answer, you're thinking about the material, you should find that a lot of this stuff is pretty basic. Yeah. So it's civilizations that are often in valleys that provide natural protection and near rivers because that's a source of water and humans need that. So I'm not asking you to memorize, but there are 4 of them. I'm putting them in chronological order, which also happens to be geographically east to west, or excuse me, west to east. And again, I apologize. The only way, normally when I write, my hand is slanted, and I'm often, usually my wrist is touching where I write. For this, I have to write straight up and down or it won't work. So it's even uglier than normal. So I do apologize that my handwriting is terrible. So we have Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Indus River Valley, which is probably the least known of these. The Indus River is today in the state of Pakistan. Historically, it's part of what we call India, which is much larger than modern India on a map. And then Shang, China. Now, when I say something like Shang, that is what we call a dynasty. Does anyone know what the word dynasty means when we're talking about human civilization?
Isn't it like a long family line of rulers, a period of time that a certain family rules a area?
Perfect, thank you. So yes, it is a family of rulers. So dad passes to son, to grandson, etc. We switch dynasties when either a king or an emperor dies without an heir, without a son, or a cousin or a nephew, or sometimes women are allowed in a few cases. Or we have a battle, we have a fight, and the person is murdered and overthrown, and the next person takes power by force. That happens quite a bit as well, as I'm sure you know. So China will have thousands of years of history. Their civilization is about 5,000 years old. America is soon to be approaching our 250th birthday. So when you think about 5,000 years and America being a little shy of 250, that puts that in context of how long the Chinese have been a dominant civilization on this planet. And we will talk about them often. So all these civilizations, here's what you need to know basically. They produce a lot of the first of humanity. The first written language. The first monumental buildings. If you go back to our 8 traits of civilization, these guys are the first civilization. They're going to do those things first. Pyramids, ziggurats, as we call them in Mesopotamia. The Indus River Valley civilization had sewer systems and running water. So a number system of time based on 60 minutes, 60 seconds, that's the Mesopotamians. Long distance trade. We know that the Egyptians traded with the Indus River Valley because they have each other's materials in their civilizations. We found that. Coins and stuff like that. So we know that they did all these early traits of civilization. That's what makes them civilized. Okay? Now, a couple of brief things. One specifically that I want to focus on for the Chinese, because China is somebody we're going to talk about a lot. The Chinese have a specific belief that will be something that is all year long. You can use this when we're learning about modern China in February and March. It's called the Middle Kingdom. The Chinese have a belief called the Middle Kingdom, which is pretty straightforward. They believe that they, the Chinese, are the world's most dominant civilization. They are the only civilized people. If you're asking, Chinese emperor, what makes people civilized, the answer is being Chinese. And let's be honest, most of us believe that our country is the best, or our culture is the best, or our religion is the best. That's kind of human nature. If we didn't believe it was the best, we probably wouldn't belong to it. Right? And plus, you live in America. Americans tend to be rather fond of ourselves and our country. Is that true? Yes. You hear people say things like, America is the greatest country in the world, which is fine if people believe that. That's okay. If you were to say, what is your statistical analysis for why you believe this? Are most people going to rattle off statistics telling you why they believe America is the greatest country in the world? No, because it's not an idea based on math or research. It's an idea based on, I'm from here, we are great. And that's the Chinese philosophy as well. Now, how this manifests itself, what does this look like when China has this belief? They seldom like to trade with foreigners. They don't enjoy getting other people's goods, because if we're the best, why do we need to trade with foreigners? What can they possibly give us that would improve our lives? Kind of arrogant, huh? A little bit, but I'm going to be honest with you. For most of human history, China has been the dominant civilization. And where I came from as a kid, if you talked a lot of trash when you played sports, it may not be nice, but if you want people to stop talking trash, then shut them up. Beat them. Win. Then they can't talk trash anymore. Right? So China could tell everybody they were the best because they were handing out L's to everybody they encountered. Just how it went for a long time. Thousands of years. So we will talk a lot about China. And if you are ever in trouble with a Chinese question, you don't know what to put, your brain has kind of gone to mush, you can always go back to the ancient belief of the Middle Kingdom. The Chinese are the center of the earth. They are the greatest civilization. Everyone else is inferior to them, and that impacts all of their decision-making at a state level. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Other things that are traditional at this time that are still part of human culture. Patriarchy, and this is true for all 4 of these, and we could argue it's true for pretty much all societies through most of human history. Isabella, I appreciate your answering, but I'm going to ask you to share the love and let somebody else chat. So don't answer for me. Can somebody tell me what patriarchy is?
Isn't that patriarchy is like kind of like sexism? I'm not sure though, but
that's okay. Hey, first of all, guys, you never have to apologize for not being sure. That's okay. You're going to say things this year that are wrong, and that's fine. So don't apologize for your answer as you're giving it. It is sexism. So be more specific, John. What do you mean by that?
It's like how like women and men, like the difference in roles, especially.
What do you? But say what you mean. Which one's going to be dominant in patriarchy?
The men are dominant in patriarchy.
Yeah. There you go. That's the answer I need. That's specific. See the difference? See the difference? Thank you, John. That was good. That's the difference between a specific answer and a vague one. The most common word I write on quizzes is vague. V-A-G-U-E. To be vague is not to be specific. You never want to be vague. Just say it. Yes, it is sexism, but in theory, that could be that women are dominant over men. That is not patriarchy. P-A-T, comes from the Latin word pater, which is the name for father. Okay, that's where we get like Papa, all those male roots. If we had a female equivalent, if we had a female-dominated society, that would be a matriarchy, which is where we get the word mother and other things, M-O, et cetera. All right? So, madre in Spanish, et cetera, et cetera. So, patriarchy is something we see across all civilizations at this time. It is the common form of life. So again, as you are making your civilization for your project, you could have a matriarchy, but it would be incredibly unusual and you'd better really explain it well. I'm not saying you can't. I would just expect to know why you're the only one doing this when literally every other civilization is going to be male dominated. Okay, at this time. All right, everybody understand me? So that makes sense. And it's not just ancient. How many female presidents has the United States of America had? That'd be a zero? Zero, correct. So it's not just historically. Women have made many strides over the last several decades, but I would have a hard time believing that you would say that men and women are completely equal in the modern world, because there's evidence that that is not true. Quite a bit, in fact. All right, so that is patriarchy, that is common. Another commonality we see throughout much of history is, of course, slavery. Now, there's different kinds of slavery. We will talk about the history of slavery, how it impacts people's societies, how it creates a system of segregation. Again, we are not talking about what is happening in our country right now because it's not our curriculum in terms of protest and systemic injustice and issues of police violence and all those kind of things. But we will talk about the systems globally that lead us to the present day. Absolutely. Because as you probably know, African Americans from 400 to 200 years ago did not generally arrive to this country by their own volition, their own choice. They were brought here as part of a systemic issue of slavery that was based on racial injustice. That's not surprising to any of you, but we will talk about the broad systems that make that happen. Okay? Absolutely. Okay. Everybody good with that? Any questions? All right. Moving on. Let me erase this because I don't have a whole lot of space on here, and we'll move on to something else. I want to move now specifically to Africa, just because I kind of randomly cover stuff as we get a chance. I'm also going to draw for you. And you will find that I am a horrible artist. If you think my handwriting is bad, wait till you see my art. Woo! And yes, I could pull up a nice picture of Africa here, but why do that when you can draw something like this beauty? There you go. That's Africa. Close enough. I tend to draw things as circles because I am the worst artist you've ever seen. If you don't believe me, you will find out I am awful. Okay? But you can't be good at everything, right? So when we talk about Africa, we tend to talk about sub-Saharan, S-U-B, Saharan. Sub meaning, anyone? If you are in a submarine, where are you?
Under.
Under, below, yep. If you have a stereo system, a speaker system, your subwoofer plays the bass. Sub means below or under, correct. So what is this? What does Saharan refer to?
The Saharan Desert.
Yep. Guys, I'm looking forward to start calling on people randomly. These are easy questions. I know the easiest thing is just to sit there, but go ahead. I'm going to get to know you better if you at least answer an easy question every once in a while. So Sahara is the world's largest desert. At this time, the Sahara Desert is really difficult to cross, as I'm sure you can imagine. So very few people do it. So sub-Saharan Africa, for almost the entirety of period zero, before we get into our content in a couple weeks, is isolated. Europeans, Middle Eastern folks, Asians generally do not come to sub-Saharan Africa, and vice versa. So not much is known about sub-Saharan Africa for most of human experience. Very little contact happens. That will start to change right before 1200 CE, and we'll talk about what factors influence that. But for the most part, these various groups of people are isolated from other areas of the world, kind of like the Americas are going to be, which we'll talk about the changes in that in time period 2, which we'll get to in like November. Okay, so the one thing I want to talk about here is that the primary cultural group in sub-Saharan Africa are called the Bantus, B-A-N-T-U, plural with an S. And they are primarily known for one thing. They migrate quite significantly during the time period before our class starts. That little circle I just did is approximately where modern day Nigeria is. The Bantus are from today what we call Nigeria. Somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, they start to move. They start to spread. They start to, kind of like America did in the West in the 19th century. And they start to expand. So much so that most modern sub-Saharan African cultures come from these ancient Bantu people, languages, ethnic groups, etc. The Bantus are kind of the root culture, if you want to think of it that way. Okay, so most of the languages spoken today in sub-Saharan Africa are a part of the Bantu family. They derive from that original Bantu. Now, what makes people like the Bantu able to just spread out? What makes people like the Egyptians dominant over other people you've never heard of? And the key is going to be, in the late part of period 0, the discovery and use of iron. Iron, of course, is a metal. All of you know this. It's on the periodic table. Previous civilizations had used stone, and then we start to use what's called bronze. Bronze is still around today, mostly decorative purposes. Iron is discovered to be much stronger. So if you had access to iron, what ways could this stronger metal help your civilization? How could it allow you to spread out and start taking over places?
Weapons.
Yeah, the most obvious answer is weapons. If you have an iron sword and your opponent has a bronze or a stone implement of some sort, iron will literally break bronze. It's not going to go well. Good. The other prominent way is going to be agriculture. You can start using iron for agricultural tools. Your plows, which allow you to tear up the ground and put seeds in the ground. If they're made of iron instead of stone, or instead of stone's not too heavy, it's not going to work. Instead of wood, it will allow you to, break up more difficult ground. Not every place has easy soil to plant crops in. Sometimes you got to dig further down to get to the good stuff. Metal, strong metal plows and agricultural tools allow that to happen. Okay, so the access to iron is going to make a lot of these early civilizations and cultures dominant over their rivals. Just so we're clear, if I use the word empire, E-M-P-I-R-E, which I know hopefully all of you know, by definition, what makes one an empire versus a state? If you're an empire, what are you doing?
Empires conquer.
Heck yeah, they do. They're flexing. I was just flexing a little bit myself there. All right? They conquer people. So by definition, if you are an empire, what do you know about those people? That they have a good military and have conquered some of their foreign rivals. That's by definition. Could you use that in an answer if you were struggling to come up with something to say? That's why in Mr. Rich's class, we don't leave questions blank. Unless we run out of time. If we do, then so be it. But we don't leave questions blank. We use our comprehension skills, or in some cases, we just call them straight up UBS it. And you take common things you know, and you make it sound better than it is. Okay? All empires conquer foreigners, period, the end. So that's something you can always use. Everybody good with that? All right, so I want to move on and talk about our first major religion. On your schedule, it says Judaism. The reason I used to do Judaism first, because that was the way your textbook laid it out. This is a new textbook, and since I lay out Hinduism first, also Hinduism happens to be the oldest major world religion, I changed my mind. I'm going to do the caste system in Hinduism first. So sometimes Mr. Rich will do that. This is why I give you a schedule, but I changed my mind. All right, so I want to start with the talk of caste. And yes, I'm doing some of your reading for you. Typically, I try to wait until you've read something before we talk about it, but this year is not typical, and I just need to cover stuff when I get to it. So there may be times when I'm ahead of your reading. That should make your reading a whole lot easier if I'm giving you big picture ideas before you do the homework. Okay? But remember, your quiz should come from the textbook, not from something Mr. Rich told you. All right? So the caste system. This is the system of social organization in ancient India. India is one of our great civilizations, been around for thousands and thousands of years. Today, India has got the second highest population in the world, soon to be the biggest population in about 15 to 20 years if things continue as they are. The caste system, like pretty much all social structures, is organized as a pyramid. Why do we draw a social structure as a pyramid? Why not a square? Why not a rhombus?
Because often the people at the bottom are probably doing the most work for society, so they're like supporting them.
That's true. That's more philosophical, yes. But in terms of pure math, if we're representing a population, so that was a good answer, Isabel. I like that. But if we're just representing a population, why a pyramid then?
If it were like a square or a circle, it would be divided into like equal sections, whereas a pyramid, like obviously someone's at the top and someone's at the bottom.
Okay, so our top is smaller.
Yeah, that didn't really make sense with what I said about like
Oh,
the
it's okay.
equal
It did
sections.
make sense.
Oh, maybe it's because there's like less leaders and more people. I don't really know.
You got it. That's right. There are less people at the top. There are more people at the bottom. That was good, Sarah. You did well. Don't worry about it. Again, I'll tell you when you're wrong. Don't worry about it. Don't second guess yourself. That's my job. All right. But I will do it in a supportive and encouraging way. I will never get mad at you for answering a question. That's why I'm asking them. I want you to answer them. Okay. So I don't need you to memorize this, but the caste system has 5 major levels. We're going to focus on the top and the bottom. Mr. Rich, what does this have to do with Hinduism? I'll get there before we finish today. Hold on. Okay. The metaphor we use to explain the caste system is like a god's body, a Hindu god's body. So I'm going to use that metaphor to help explain how this works. So I would like you to, if possible, to know the top and the bottom, but you don't need to worry about the ones in the middle. Okay? The people at the top are called the Brahmins. On the metaphor of the god's body, they are the head. Makes sense at the top, right? What does our head do for us? And I realize that's a very vague term, but what does our head or our brain do for the human body? Someone I haven't heard from, perhaps. I appreciate that. Those of you that like to answer, I appreciate you. But someone who I haven't heard from, and I can tell who I've heard from because you go to the top of my screen when you talk. So those of you at the bottom of the screen, I know I haven't heard from you.
The head controls everything.
Absolutely. Perfect. Easy answer, right? The head controls everything. Decisions are made, etc. So what kind of jobs would you expect to see the Brahmins do in Indian society? If they're the ones in charge.
Government?
Yeah, government leaders, perfect. Religious leaders, priests, scholars. Most of us cannot read or write, so there's very few of us that do that. So they're going to be the folks that control that system. Now, there's also a racial component, because another question you may have is, where did this system come from? The answer is we're not really sure entirely. It's so old, at least 4,000 years ago. At least, could be 5, we don't know. We don't quite know. But historically, in Indian culture, the Brahmins were lighter-skinned people. The people at the bottom were darker-skinned people. Historically, many Indians native to what's called the subcontinent, that part of India that sticks out into the, Indian Ocean, are darker-skinned people. So it is believed that the caste system was probably introduced by foreign invaders who conquered India at some unknown long ago time and brought this system with them. Because why would you create a social system and put yourself not on the top? Right? If I set up a system, I'm going to be the boss. So it's believed these lighter skinned people from Central Asia, today where a lot of the stands are, if you know where the map is, like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, etc. Those folks probably came in, conquered parts of India, and made this system be what it is probably 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. But that's just an educated guess. We don't really know, and we probably never will. Now, next we have the warriors in the second area. They're the biceps, they're the muscle, they're, making sure that everything is, we're safe and we're secure. The middle group are the merchants, people that trade goods, craftspeople, people that make things. They're the thighs. If you've ever watched someone who's a good sprinter, who's really fast, they often have big thigh muscles. Because if you run a sprint on track, you start bent over and you jump out of the blocks, and that's how you start running. And so you need powerful thighs to get you going quickly. So that is the engine of our economy. Trade goods, merchants who do the trading, etc. The second from the bottom, you have the feet. They're the farmers. They're the ones that provide the basis of our society. If we don't eat, nothing else happens. We've already talked about that. So your feet, you oftentimes see an NFL athlete who misses a week of a game because they have turf toe, and you're thinking, oh, one toe? Hard to run really fast and quickly and with precision if your toes aren't working properly. Okay, so your feet are the basis. Well, Mr. Rich, the last group then, we've already done the feet. What's left? Well, that should give you a hint. This last group is called in English the untouchables. And in the metaphor of the God's body, they're the dirt the God walks on. Oh boy. Okay? So untouchable is not a cute nickname. You are literally untouchable. If you accidentally is an untouchable, like if you're walking down the street and you see a Brahmin, you should cross the street and get away from them. You don't even deserve to be in the same area as them. So everybody has social classes. All societies do. The word I would use to describe the caste system historically is rigid. I mean, in modern America, our social classes are based on wealth. So can you create a new business or become a professional musician or athlete or win the lottery and drastically increase your wealth? Sure. Will you generally be accepted into a higher social class if you suddenly get money? Yeah, I mean, there's some races. So if you're like a person of color, you may not be accepted. There was a video last week of a former NFL wide receiver who was moving into his brand new neighborhood. He's a multimillionaire, and he got stopped by the security guard because, you know, black guy. So it's not always true, but generally money allows you to move up. This system, How do you know what caste you're in? If you can't change because of money or opportunity, then are you going to change at all?
No.
How do you know what caste you're in? It's the caste your grandparents are in, and their grandparents. And your great-great-grandkids are going to be in the same caste. There are rare exceptions where changes happen, but they're so minor they're not worth talking about in a class like this, where we're saying hi for 10 minutes and moving on. Okay? So you're pretty much where you were born is where you will die. So the word rigid is non-flexible. There's not a whole lot of fairy tales about a poor untouchable princess was seen by a Brahmin and they fell in love and they got married. No. Save that crap for like Disney. Not happening. Okay? No go on that one. Everybody clear with me? So, what does caste dictate about your life? What kind of things are structured because of your caste? What do you think? What are normal things most people choose to get to do that might not be a choice in this system?
Jobs.
Jobs, yeah. Your caste tells your job. Good answer. Now, there are hundreds of subcastes within this system, so there's lots of more details we're not getting into. Again, we're just hitting the big picture for everything we do. How about who you get married to? That's a caste structure as well. Where you live, caste structure. So pretty much, and I hate to use this word, but this is one of the few chances I think it's merited, pretty much everything is dictated by your caste. Pretty much everything. Okay? Now, if you had a PhD, you might have learned this last year. We want to think about ways we can describe religion, like how do we discuss religion? What are ways we can compare it and contrast it? Because that's one of the things we're going to have to do is compare and contrast major ideas. Here is 2 terms that you may remember from last year, and if you don't, that's okay, you're learning them now. universalizing, and ethnic. Ring any bells for anybody? Maybe, kind of, sort of. A universalizing religion, just think of the word universal, is a religion that does what in terms of its followers?
It like spreads, like people share it all across the world.
Perfect. Excellent. Yes, it spreads easily. You might use the word missionary. We're trying to get people to join our faith. They might knock on your door, or you move into a neighborhood and somebody comes over and says, hey, I belong to so-and-so organization. Would you like to join us this upcoming weekend? You know, that kind of thing. What would ethnic mean then, which is an opposite term?
It stays in one area.
Perfect. Awesome. More of y'all are answering my questions. Love it. Awesome. Okay. My goal is that we can do a lot of breakout rooms where we can talk to each other in small groups, but because we have so much content to cover and not a whole lot of time together right now, we're just gonna have to do some days like this, and y'all answering questions will keep you more engaged and make it go faster. So I appreciate you willing to do that. And if you're wrong on occasion, that's okay too. We're all gonna make mistakes. It's not a big deal. I promise. Okay, so universalizing spreads, ethnic tends not to spread. Which one do you think Hinduism is?
Ethnic.
Why?
Because you usually don't see many people like missionaries from Hinduism like knock on your door and stuff.
Okay, that's a good practical answer. Absolutely true. The main reason why Hinduism is ethnic, if you were to join a religion, or if you join anything, if you get a new job, where do you tend to start in the organization when you get a new job? You gonna be
At the
manager?
bottom.
At the bottom. Yeah, much like the great philosopher Drake said, you start at the bottom, okay? So you start at the bottom, which would be an untouchable, which means you're gonna be incredibly poor. You can be kicked out of society for really any violation of the normal, in fact, there's a word for this, you are an outcast. That's where this term comes from. You are out of the caste system. Oh boy, that's pretty rough. So let's talk about this the last 5 minutes we have, because we're almost done today. You might look at this and go, my gosh, the life of an untouchable is horrible. They have terrible jobs. They live in horrible poverty. They have no rights, no privileges, no nothing. And all that's true. Then why do it? Why accept it? How might this tie in with the religion historically now of Hinduism? Modern Hinduism, this is no longer the case. But historical Hinduism, the caste system and Hinduism are tied together. Hindus believe that all living creatures have a soul, S-O-U-L. So birds have a soul. Blades of grass have a soul. Human beings have a soul. Everything that's alive has a soul. And that soul is immortal. The soul lives forever. Do physical bodies live forever? No. So therefore, what is the Hindu belief? When a body dies, what happens to the soul?
It gets reincarnated.
Perfect. Reincarnation. That a soul is reborn into a new body. We will talk about this in some other faiths as well. So this is where we see the caste system and Hinduism come together. May I erase? Does everybody have the word reincarnation? We good with that? Anybody need to know a second? I'm sorry, there's such a little space for me to write. I have to erase a lot of times.
So that if you were reincarnated, you would be reincarnated in the same class?
Well, let's talk about what those possibilities are. So first of all, I'm going to teach you 3 terms and then we'll call it a day. And this is the basis of Hinduism, realizing that it's way more complex. For most of this, we're going to talk about a religion for 20 or 30 minutes. And obviously there's many subcasts and details that we're not getting into. This is just an introductory hello view. All right. So Hindus, whoops, let me get the right tool here. Hindus believe in what is called Dharma. You may or may not have heard of that word before, but Dharma can be defined as your sense of moral duty or responsibility. I'm going to write duty because it's a much shorter word than responsibility. How you should behave, how you should act, what you should do. How does a Hindu know what that is? You know about 3 things about Hinduism. Guess one of those 3 things.
The caste system.
Perfect. Yes. When I ask you questions, I generally want you to know them. So if you don't know them, realize that I'm building on something we've already talked about. Because my goal is not to ask questions and have nobody answer them. So you have a toolkit you can use, even if it's only got a screwdriver and a hammer. What I'm asking you needs a screwdriver or hammer. We're not getting into wrenches and saws and stuff like that, okay? So it's your moral duty, how you should behave, how you should act, etc. Think of this like a test or an assignment, okay? You're supposed to study for your test, prepare for it, know the rules, follow them. Then there's a word that has become commonplace in English outside of Hinduism, and that is the word karma. Okay? You probably know what this means. Can anyone tell me how you might describe what karma is?
A consequence of something you do.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys are really impressive so far. This is a really difficult situation, and both last week and today y'all are giving me good answers, and I'm getting more and more of you participating, which makes me very happy. And when Mr. Rich is happy, good things happen to you. Because remember, I told you last week, I decide how many assignments you have. I decide how the grades work. I decide everything. If y'all are doing well for me, I will make it easier for you to do well in my class. When y'all don't do what I ask, or you're not participating, or you're not answering questions, I can make it harder. So right now, y'all are big thumbs up for me. So thank you. I do appreciate it. Karma is like your grade. You might hear somebody say, what goes around comes around. Like, don't do that. It's bad karma. Okay? Don't do something mean or cruel, because then it means that something mean or cruel might be coming its way towards you. So dharma is like your test. Karma is like your grade. So when you die, your soul will go up or down the levels of life depending on your performance on the Dharma, which results in your karma. So if you're a great untouchable, you take it, you don't complain, you don't whine, you know it sucks, but you deal. When you die, your soul will move up the ladder. Now, this also includes non-human. So if you're a bad untouchable, you could be like a slug in your next life, or a dung beetle, or a blade of grass, and you're just kind of, you know, how do you be a good blade of grass? I have no idea. But that's something that could happen. So the goal is to move up, 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 and I'll end with this. We'll move up, where eventually your soul is in the body of a male Brahmin. Not a Brahmin, a male Brahmin. So to finish this out, you have to be in a male's body. This would be an example of what concept, kids, that we talked about a few minutes ago.
Patriarchy.
Patriarchy. Now, you can say male domination, but when you use the word patriarchy, people go, ooh, ah, and they think you're smarter. And when they think you're smarter, they give you better grades. Okay? So this is how we play the game of school. Sometimes vocabulary is a flex that helps people go, oh, they can check. Because remember, I'm not giving your AP test score. Somebody you've never met will. So being somewhat impressive in vocabulary can be helpful. All right? So you go up the ladder, up the ladder, up the ladder. And if you are in a male Brahmin's body and your karma is good, you will achieve what's called moksha. Your soul is still living, but it is not reincarnated. It is hanging out in what we would call paradise or heaven, a soul-like vacation, if you will. So if you follow your dharma, you'll get good karma. Eventually, you'll achieve moksha. That's the goal. And that's about as simple as I can make it for one of the world's great faiths. Number 3, the third most popular religion on the planet, Christianity, Islam. Number 3, Hinduism, even though there's really hardly anybody who's a Hindu that is not Indian. Because, of course, India has a massive population. Okay? Follow your dharma, get good karma, you'll achieve moksha. So, you have a reading quiz that has been posted. It is due by the time we get back together on Thursday. You have your second reading, obviously, that goes with that. It's only 6 pages, so it shouldn't take you too long. You're going to take some kind of notes. Hopefully you did that over the weekend as well. What I need before I release you, oh, another thing is, remember, if you need a textbook, you can come get it today from 4 to 5 in the courtyard. And if you need a textbook and can't come, I need you to email me so we can figure out a plan to get you one ASAP. I'd love you to get one before the holiday weekend. That would be great. Is there anybody, and let me take off my screen so I can see you lovely people, all of you, because I can't see all of you all the time. Is there anybody that's in a group of 2 for their civilization project? Anybody in a group of 2? All right, how about this? Can someone who's in a group of 3, would you mind letting Amari join your group? Amari, you still on here, dude? Yep, I see you. So can somebody, Amari, do you know anybody in this class, buddy? Yes. So can you work that on your own and I don't need to participate? I don't need to work that out?
I got you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So Amari's going to work with somebody else. You have my permission to go from 3 to 4, and your project is due next week. Anything else from anybody? All right, DJ.
Okay, so we had one reading quiz. We had 1 or 2 reading quizzes. Because I remember, I'm sorry. We had one that was assigned, and do we have another one? Because there was only 1 form on Google Classroom. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like,
okay.
Something's
Remember,
going
when in
on.
doubt, look at your schedule. When in doubt, look at your schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, good job today. Thank you for many of you participating. The rest of you, I look forward to hearing from you soon. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you on Wednesday. Or Thursday, excuse me. Goodbye.